Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Wayne Baker, one of the staff therapists with Affair Recovery. And this week we're going to talk about lessons learned. You're going to be able to read an article from a betrayed spouse's point of view. And I thought what I would do is talk about lessons I've learned as a therapist and working with couples struggling through infidelity, recovery. And I've been doing that for over 15 years. And remember, I was unfaithful in my marriage 25 years ago. So none of this is the definitive answer. There are so many things that I could talk about. It would take us hours. But I'm going to talk about some things from my perspective on what I've seen couples do that do this really well. And the first is I want to let you know, I want to overemphasize that you are most likely in for the fight of your life, probably for the fight of your relationship and for the fight of your own heart as you walk through for both of you. Because I can almost promise that if you're the betrayed spouse, this is something that you never signed up for and you never thought would happen. And if you're the unfaithful one, I can almost guarantee that you never intended to do this. This wasn't premeditated on your part. Because when you took your vows, you said, that you would forsake all others. And I think most people meant those. And then what happens along the way? So I do believe that you're in for a big fight. And there's no explanation or anything that I can share or anybody else can share that's going to be a quick fix for you, that's going to give you some lasting answer. It just takes time. There's so much information out there on the internet. There's so many books written, and I see mostly betrayed spouses in my office week after week that have this amazing library of resources on sexual addiction and infidelity, which is all good and fine to go read. There's some stuff out there that's better than others, in my opinion, but also there's not enough information out there that's going to equal the healing and transformation. Understanding only gets us so far. There's a lot of work for everybody involved that's going to help you heal and then help you transform. I just want you to remember too, that when you're in the midst of this heartache, that sometimes our best thinking is really not our best thinking. So just remember that you need community and some good resources, but also somebody that's been down this road that can help you walk through it. So having said all that as the precursor, the preamble to what I want to talk about, the first thing that I have seen couples do that do it really well is the whole truth comes out quickly. Usually within the first, let's say 3 to 4 months. Sooner than that if possible, but there needs to be a little bit of a window where the unfaithful spouse writes out a full disclosure. When he or she does that, it goes a long way. It's painful. It's a painful process for them, and it's a painful process for the betrayed spouse to have to hear it. But once the whole truth is out, Rick talks about this all the time, then we know. Then you can begin to move on. But when you don't know, and when truth is trickled out over months and sometimes years, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. So truth is very important. And writing it all out, and then also giving the betrayed spouse a season to ask questions, whatever questions they want to ask, within reason. There's some guidelines that we talk about. That's probably the number one thing, or the first thing, I will say, that's the first thing that needs to happen. The whole truth, as soon and quickly, succinctly as possible. But the second thing I want to talk about is couples that do this really well. Gottman calls them masters of relationship. They talk, and talk some more. They talk about this infidelity every single day. Not for hours on end, but probably about 20 minutes every day. They talk about it. The couples that do that really take me up on this challenge, do well. And I have some guidelines about that. Rick thinks I'm a little harsh. That's okay. I've just seen it work. It worked for me and my marriage 25 years ago when we spent some time every single day during supper cleanup, and that was it. And so that's one of the things that's so important. And it's very few people really take me up on this challenge, if you will, but it's so vitally important. So when I say talk some more, here's what I'm thinking. That for 20 minutes at the same time, every single day, the unfaithful spouse leads a discussion. Don't start it by just saying, hey, how was your day? That doesn't send the signal to your spouse that you're really wanting to check in with them. I want you to say, hey, I want to check in with you. How are you doing? Did you have any reminders today? Do you have any questions for me? And then you let them talk. And what I strongly suggest for both of you is you set a timer, 20 minutes. Maybe in the beginning 30, but I promise you, if you will do this, you're going to see that that window gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and you're going to need less and less time, and you're not going to go on and on for hours at an end. And most of you know exactly what I'm talking about, and those are not helpful. The thing that is not helpful, hear me, marathon sessions are not helpful, but short conversations, and you know every single day you're going to get to talk about this. You're going to get to talk about any reminders you have, any triggers you have, any questions that you might have. And then for the unfaithful spouse, I want you to find a way to make some amend, express some sorrow, express regret. Also express some gratitude for your spouse and staying with you and working through this with you, even though it's hard and there's going to be missteps along the way, that you're here and you're the one they want to be with. If you can do that, and it's messy, but if you can do it and keep trying to do it, it's going to go so far down the road to help you guys heal. And I think it can even shorten that window. You know, we say 18 to 24 months on average. Sometimes it's 3 to 5 years, sometimes longer. But if you'll do what I'm asking you to do, this daily check-in, could be a really helpful tool that I've seen many, many couples use. So along those lines of the conversations, the other thing I would say, and you've heard us talk about this because we make such a big deal out of it through EMS Online and EMS Weekend, is empathy is king. There's some research out there that shows that women have a bigger or a better empathy gene, or are able to express it better and easier than men are. There are some differences in the way that happens that are genetic or biological. That's a given. Men are never going to be able to do it, or rarely ever going to be able to do it the same way or as good as a woman can. But we can get better and we can try. And for men and women too, where it's almost next to impossible to express empathy, here are the things I want you to consider, is that most likely it wasn't demonstrated or expressed to you when you were a kid or a teenager. And that may lie some of the basic problems that were there to begin with. So you need to be a student of empathy. Learn about it, read a little bit about it, but more importantly, go do some therapy, preferably some EMDR or ETT or internal family systems work over your childhood wounds. You may not have trauma, like a lot of people would define trauma, but you certainly have some wounds around that. And so do some of that work on your greatest wounds and see if that doesn't begin to shift a little bit in you, that you're able to express more empathy for your spouse and maybe for your kids and your siblings and coworkers too. It's not going to make you weak. It's going to make you stronger in many ways. But empathy is key. And so I want you to take a look at that if it's really hard for you to demonstrate or communicate empathically to your spouse through this whole thing. Another point I want to mention is that for the betrayed spouse through this process, good, healthy boundaries and self-care are really important. Healthy boundaries are going to be boundaries that you set for yourself about what you will and won't do. We can never really successfully enforce boundaries on our spouse. You can make a request about not going here or not doing this, but you got to remember that everybody Every one of us is born with free will and choice. I think that is fundamental to every human being on the planet. And sometimes those rights are taken away, but for most of us, they're there. And when you start to inflict boundaries on other people, they will backfire sooner or later. So set those good, healthy boundaries for yourself and lots of self-care. We have a mentor couple that comes to our EMS weekends, and one of the things that this woman did is she set time every day to grieve, to take a bubble bath, have a glass of tea or a glass of wine, and just really pamper herself and allow herself to grieve or cry or do whatever she needed to do. That's one of the most beautiful pictures of self-care that I could see. It's not indulgence. It's how do you nurture, how do you cherish, how do you take care of your own soul and your own heart through this process. And that's going to be different for everybody. You have to be still and quiet and listen to what your heart is needing during this time. So take some time to do that. So along the lines of talking and having conversation, Brene Brown says that connection is made up of 3 components: vulnerability, courage, and conversation. When she said this, I don't know, a year or so ago, the first time I heard it, I just about jumped out of my seat because I think she's right on based on what I've seen in my office week after week. We're all wanting connection, intimacy, and it's also the thing that scares us to death. But if you look at the 3 components that she talks about, the courage to have a conversation and to be vulnerable, talk about what it is you're going through or what you need. Avoid criticism and defensiveness. So speak from your true heart and what you need, and then really learn to listen to what the other person is saying. And not only that, but also listen to what we're saying. You've been around people that say the same thing over and over and over and over again. And sometimes when I'm around that, I start to wonder, did they really hear what they say? Are they connected to what they're saying? So listening is a big deal in the process of this, and really for a skill of our lifetime. I think I'm going to do a newsletter or 2 about listening in the weeks ahead. It's so vitally important. It's a big part of the healing journey through this. One more thing I want to say about the conversations that I hope that you guys have on a daily basis, especially for the betrayed spouses. Be careful. Do not fall into the trap of comparison. The affair partner might have been thinner, prettier, stronger, more handsome, more money, who knows what. Do not fall into that comparison trap. It is something that I've seen people fall into, and then it can take years to get out of it. If you do that, I just want to tell you up front, that's your work to do. I don't care what your spouse said or did or what they did and who they did it with. We are all fearfully and wonderfully made and created in God's image, and it doesn't matter. And you need to be able to hold your head up high. And if there's anything that's getting in the way of that, then I'm begging you to go find a therapist that can help you work through that. Because if you stay in that trap, the longer you stay there, it's harder and harder to get out of it. That's just one more thing that I see in the lessons that I have learned over the years of not letting people stay in there very long. And if you do, just know on some level, you're choosing that. Don't choose that path. And as I say that, I thought of one more thing I want to say about these conversations. Don't rehash the events. You get a short window, maybe 6 to 9 months to do that at the most. But the more you rehash it, the more we ingrain it in our brains, the more we build those neural pathways that way. And I don't want you to do that. Talk about what you feel, talk about the triggers and the reminders, and just name them, really. You don't even have to talk about them, just name them. And for the unfaithful spouse, just to be able to express some empathy there would be perfect. Simple. We make it much harder than it really needs to be. And I think the last thing I want to talk about for today is this component of emotional safety. I hear couples all the time, will I ever trust again? Can she trust me again? Can he trust me again? And the way I see it, and sometimes I feel like I'm marching upstream when I talk about it this way, but until somebody can convince me otherwise. And based on my experience, the emotional safety, if that can be the focus, the emotional, psychological safety, where you're being safe for yourself and you're being safe for each other, then trust is a byproduct. So focus on those behaviors and activities, and every couple can talk about what it is that makes you feel safe in this relationship. I can provide that for myself as well, and so can you, but we can provide it for one another in any relationship. Please, I hope that honesty is one of those components that helps you both feel safe. It may not always make you feel close or comfortable, but it will start to help you feel safe in the long run. And then probably the second component I would think of is consistency. That's why this daily conversation and being consistent and starting to demonstrate that, you start to slowly unwind and you'll both feel safe. And then slowly over time be able to put this all behind you. Okay, so I know I said I just wanted to make one more point, but I really want to make one more. To be open to forgiveness. And it takes a long time. Don't rush into that. Don't let somebody force you into that. You just be open to forgiving yourself and to forgive one another. I love the article that the betrayed spouse has written, that you please take some time to read that. There's a quote in there from, I don't remember who it is off the top of my head, but what stood out to me is that forgiveness is only for the brave. It's for those of us that are willing to confront our own pain and our own suffering and accept for ourselves that we are permanently changed, hopefully for the good, as we walk through this and deal with our own stuff and deal with any kind of the relational trauma that we've experienced. And you'll come out of this on the other side feeling victorious and feeling better, stronger, more connected to yourself and to God and to one another. The journey is long, and I just want you to be encouraged to keep the faith and keep working. Don't be passive about any of this. For those of you that are betrayed and walking that path, I would love it if you would consider taking Harboring Hope, signing up for that course. I think the sign-ups start here any day. There's a link to it on the website where you can get a description and probably some testimonials. What I have seen over the years, that for the betrayed spouse that does that course, the couple themselves end up doing better much quicker than couples that don't. It's a great course, and I would strongly recommend that you consider it. So thanks so much for joining me today. I hope this was helpful. Please keep writing in. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll be back to see you next week. Thanks so much.